Hello everyone, I am Rod and I am the game design instructor for the Academy of Entertainment Arts over at Dixie Holland High School. If you are one of my students, it's Mr. Flowers to you, and welcome to this video tutorial. Good evening. What I want to do today is start off with the first in a series of videos for creating texture maps for the Unreal Engine. I'd like to go and make a sort of like a rocky cobblestone kind of texture, a sandy texture, and a grass texture. The longest one's going to be the grass texture because we're actually going to make grass and get into making foliage for Unreal. But to start off, we're going to do the easier ones first. The easiest one on the list is going to be creating the sand, so let's actually do the sand first. And the way I'm going to do that is first set up a new document. And I like my textures to be pretty big, get more detail that way, so 2048 is going to be my starting size. And resolution, I'm going to do 300. I'm going to go ahead and name this thing right off the bat, so I'm going to do T underscore, and this is going to be, you can name it sand, or you can say dirt, or whatever you're going to name it, just so long as it's something. So I will just say sand. And I'll leave it at that. Okay. I'm going to unlock or create a new layer. We don't really need to have a background layer on here. You can always delete that if you need to. I'm just going to do that. But we need two different colors to make our sand. You can do like a brownish sand, or if you look outside and look at Florida's sand, it's really kind of gross. Florida sand's kind of like a gray, so I'm going to grab like a medium gray. And then the other color is going to be sort of like a yellowish. Like a dirty yellow. And I don't know how I want to mix these just yet. You can try a number of different options. You can do a clouds render, or let's actually see how a cloud looks. Render, throw on some clouds. And that almost looks like Florida dirt. Not quite gray enough. Alright, I'm going to undo that. Instead, I'm going to drop in just a flat color. And I think I'm going to drop in the yellow first. And then I'll create a new one. I'll drop in the gray. On both of these, I want to create a speckle. So I'm going to go to the yellow one. I'm going to turn the gray one off. Filter. Let's go down to noise. Add noise. And mine's set to 2%. I'm going to just raise it up to 5. Let me try 10. I want this to be very grainy because it is going to be sand. So that should work. I'm not going to check monochromatic for this. A little bit of color helps the eye. So hit that one. And I will do the same thing for the gray. Filter, noise. Alright. And let's see how we're going to blend these. I'm going to try opacity first. So I'm going to grab the gray and drop the opacity down some. And you can see, yeah, like a soft yellow with a little bit of a gray on top. I'll put that back to 100%. I'm just trying all these different filter options to see what I like. So dissolve, darken. This one's kind of cool, but it's probably too dark, and we want it to be a bit more realistic. Color burn looks a little closer. This is pretty bright. Would work for like desert sand. Screen's way too bright. Lighter color, not too bad. Overlay, I think, is a little bit too bright. So I will try the... I'm going to do the color burn. And then on top of this, I am just going to go down to here with this little circle on top of a block looking thing. This is to create a layer mask. I'm just going to hit that. And that's going to go on top of my gray one. I'm going to select the mask inside this gray here. So if you click on the little gray piece, you can select the gray tile. You can also select the mask tile. So I'm going to grab this white mask, filter, come down to render, and I'm going to do clouds. What that's going to do is create a clouds render on top of this little layer mask, and it's going to create this subtle highlight and shadow blending option. If you want to do anything really in depth, you can always tweak this, but I'm not going to go too heavy with it. Because this should show up pretty decent inside of Unreal without any major tweaks to it. Because we use the filter options in Photoshop, they should tile pretty nicely as well. So nothing too fancy. We have the two pieces here. I'm going to select both of them and then click on this little group here, and that's going to give me my diffuse group, so I'm going to name this diffuse. Go ahead and close that. And then I will hit duplicate. So right click, duplicate group. And this group is going to be the bump for the bump map. Okay. I'm going to grab the bump map, pull that down. I'm going to turn the diffuse layer off, and I'm just going to compress this bump map into a single layer. So right click, merge group. And then for the bump map, we have to make this all gray or black and white. So image, adjustments, come down to black and white. And that will make this black and white. Hit OK. Now for sand, sand is pretty glossy when it gets hit by sunlight. It has a very good reflection. So if we wanted to do a specular map, we could use this one to create the specular. Specular maps are done using black and white filters just like the bump map. The difference is anything that is light registers as shininess, and anything that is dark will register as not shiny. So if you want to bring this up and really push the highs and lows on this, you're more than welcome to. I'm going to keep this bump, and I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this. So I'm going to hold Alt, click and drag this down, and now I have a bump copy. I'm going to name the bump copy Specular, and then I'm going to turn the specular one off. I'm going to go back to the bump, and now for the bump, I'm going to push the graininess up. So I'm going to go up to Image, Adjustments, Levels. And all I'm going to do here is tweak the high and low values so that we have a lot sharper sand grains. So I'm going to bring this dark one down, and you can really see this, the graininess kind of pushing through. I'm going to bring the light one down some. And then I'm going to hit OK. There's my bump. I have a specular. And we'll get more in detail on how speculars work, but this should work just fine. And we have our diffuse channel. Sweet. So I'm going to go to File, Save As. And remember, this is going to the Game Design folder. You should create a texture maps folder in there so you can have these available. Or you can put them on your RTD2 drive folder at the school. So anyway, T_sand PSD, make sure that we have that saved. Yep. And now we want to do a targa for each of these. So File, Save As. I'm going to hit Targa and make sure that we label these. So T_sand_D for diffuse. File, Save As, Targa. And this one's going to be B for bump map. And then this one is going to be S for specularity. Now, one thing I want to do is create a normal map. So I'm going to select my bump map, and we're going to double click on this thing, and we're going to type in normal. And a normal map does a lot of what a bump map does, but it talks to the actual normal of a plane. So let me illustrate that. I'm going to pull up just a little drawing thing so I can show you an example here. So let's pretend that this thing is a polygon plane, and on the surface of this we have these little things pointing up called normals. There's one on the center of the face, and there are normals that exist on each of your vertices. And these things talk to the light information that kind of comes in. So as light, well, let me get the other color. As light comes into your level and interacts with an object, these little normals kind of gather that information and tell that light how to be distributed over the face of the object. So what a normal map does is it talks to the normals that are on this little face here and say, hey, as the light touches, you're going to change how that light is being affected over this surface. So it's going to create the illusion of depth on here. What a bump map does is something similar, but not quite as in depth. It takes the high value information, all the whites, and then it takes all the dark value information. It actually sets them on two different planes. It creates a new map. So if I create another one of these, actually let me just duplicate that off. So it takes the light information, and then I'm going to go ahead and just invert this real quick. And it takes the dark information and it separates them into two separate images. And when you move your eye, or when the camera moves around the object, it creates a parallax effect, which means that these two objects move at slightly different intervals in relation to each other, and it creates the illusion that there's depth there. So that's the kind of the way a bump map works. And then the way a normal map works is by actually talking to the light and distributing it over the object. Okay, so I'm going to go grab my normal, and we should have this plugin installed. If anybody who's watching who's not part of the class does not have this plugin installed, it should be the under NVIDIA Tools and Normal Map Filter. You can get the Normal Map Filter at the NVIDIA website. So if I come down to here, NVIDIA Texture Tools for Adobe, you can download this and add this to your plugins folder in Adobe. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Filter, come down to Normal Map, and hit that. And we're going to get this little window here where you can see this purplish blue with green highlights kind of thing going on. And we want to set this, and you can actually look here and see all the depth that's already being created in this. The math in here is a little bit out of the realm of this video, but it works pretty cool, and it does take all those high and low values and tweaks them for us. You can invert any of these. So if you want, for example, your values to push in, you can uncheck invert Y, and you can see that it changes direction. You can change your Z value. In Unreal, your Z value should be toward your screen, so you can kind of move this. You can see this is our depth. You can invert the X along the X-axis, and so on. I'm going to see how it looks without inverting anything. Come over here, make sure we're set to average RGB and unchanged. We can have this set for add height to normal map, and animate light's fine. So far this looks okay. If we have any other issues, you can choose like biased, which kind of gives you that. You can choose one of the RGB values. You can choose the max value. You can choose whichever to kind of get different results, but average RGB looks like it's going to work just fine. The min Z and max Z scale has to do with how high or low the depth is on this. So it creates a peaks and valley kind of effect here. So all the low values have a minimum range of 0, and all the high values have a maximum range of 40, and it just kind of goes through and makes that for us. And then I'm going to hit OK. It's going to do a little process, and it's going to create a normal map for us. And I will save the normal one out as well. So T_sand _n for normal. Photoshop, Targa, save. Okay, so now let's test all this in Unreal. Open up Unreal. This is my terrain. And before you start messing around inside of Unreal and adding textures and materials and all that stuff, make sure you save it, because Unreal Engine 4 has been having a issue with the actual material editor. Every time you open it, a lot of times it crashes, and this is a known bug. They're working on it. It happens with certain video cards, so it's always a good idea to save your work first. For example, on the school computer, I can't open the normal map, or I can't open the material filter or editor. It dies immediately. But in here, let's see if it'll work at home. And grab my folder. Let's see, we want our sand pieces. So I'm going to just select, I'm going to hold Control and just select all the pieces that I need. So all of them, I'm going to drag those in. Ideally, you want these to go to their own texture folder inside of here. And I'll make one of those as soon as these load in. Okay, so now they're loaded in, I'm going to go ahead, I should have done this before, but I'm going to go ahead and add a new folder. And all I'm doing, I'm on Content, and I click the New button, and I'm adding a new folder. This is going to be called Textures, if I can spell today. And there is a difference between, oh, I already had one. I have a custom textures folder right there. I'm just going to grab these, and I'm going to move them into my custom textures folder. Move. Yay. It's a good thing to have all these things labeled for textures. There is a difference between a texture and a material. The texture is a picture file that we've loaded in with the information, texture patterns, color that we've created in an outside program, or you've taken a picture of like a brick wall or whatever and you've loaded it in. And then the material is the thing that takes the shader information and all of your different texture files and converts it into a applicable material. So I'm going to grab my diffuse channel, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go ahead and create material. So up top there's create material. And Unreal's going to go ahead and give it a name for us, which is fine. I'm going to use the default name. Unreal's naming convention is usually whatever the thing's name is, _mat for material. And I'm going to go ahead and open this up. See if I can save it first. Okay. Here's to hoping it don't break. Alright. With this one already set and locked into a channel, you can see that the output, this little white output, is the all color channel. Basically, it's our diffuse, and that goes into our base color. Over here, we have these different options. Right now, it's being applied to a sphere. I'm going to hit the little box cube icon so you can see it being displayed over a flat surface. And there it is. And it looks kind of grainy like sand should. I'm going to hit the little minimize window. And I'm going to drag in my other pieces. So I'm going to drag in the normal map, the bump map, and then the specular. Go ahead and drag those in. Okay. We're going to organize these. And you can see how these are going to work. My eyes cannot differentiate. Okay, this one looks like the normal. This one looks like the bump map. So I'm going to put this up here. Bump. Specular and normal. And you can see how all these are already organized here. The specular map. I'm just going to plug that into specular. It's going to go ahead and do some calculations. And you can see how the light is being distributed over this. Now the light's going over everything because we didn't really do any fanciness to this to make it look rough or whatever for the specular. We could actually use our bump map for our specular to see a difference here. I'm going to go ahead and drop that in. And what it's going to do is it's going to change the wire to our bump map. And you can see it's picking the high and low values a little bit nicer. Just because there's more depth to that image. But that's okay. I'll go ahead and put this. I'm actually going to put this through a multiply. I don't see a specular power on here. But that's fine. I'm going to just go ahead and put this through. I'm going to plug in the normal map to the normal here. And there it is, looking very grainy. And for the bump map, I'm going to come up here, type in bump offset. You have an options for advanced or for the basic. I'm just going to use the basic and drag that in. I'll go ahead and plug that into UVs for our diffuse channel. And then we're just going to take one of the color channels. I usually just pick red and just drop it into height. Give it a second to process. And you can see that some height is being applied already. Now what you could do to kind of make this more precise is you can take this bump offset and plug it into each of your other channels. I'm not going to do that for this case. I just want to see how it's going to look without pushing these up. But this should be a basic quick setup. So let's hit the checkbox to apply it. While that thing's cooking, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to select my terrain. And I'm going to grab my sand material. I'm just going to go ahead and drop this in to see what it looks like. Okay, and I'm back in, and this is how it's looking on here. Back to lit mode. Let me just grab my light source. Okay. So here is the sand texture. You can look at it and see how it's nice and sandy. There is a bit of a tiling effect. If you look out into the distance, you can see it tiling, which isn't too horrific, but we can fix that. But it does look like sand. If we want to change how this is distributed, we can always go back in. So let's hit escape. I'm going to open up my material. And now I'm going to go and set in a texture coordinate. So type in texture, COOR, and there it is right here, texture coordinate. I'm going to plug this into the UVs of each one of these guys here. And what this is going to do is allow us to adjust the tiling of this texture. Right now, one looks like it's pretty solid. I'm going to dial this down to, let's try 0.25, 0.25. And I will hit apply. And while that's cooking, let's give it a second to cook. All right, so now that we let that cook and process, we can take a look at everything, and you can see it's a lot nicer at this particular size. It looks a lot more like sand. If we get real close to it, you can see that it's breaking up. So we can always change this to, instead of 0.25, we can change to 0.5, and we'll have a nicer spread over our land. Okay, but that's going to wrap it up for this video, and when we come back, I'm going to do the cobblestone kind of slate slab sort of thing. All right, and I shall see you next time.